Next up is Daniel from Aphrodite, a revolutionary business analytics tool. And in his talk, he's pulling back the curtain to show you the new technology that they've had to invent to calculate geographic ROAS and cross-platform ROAS for crowdfunding ventures and e-commerce. Without further ado, Daniel, the stage is yours.
Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm the founder and CEO of Aphrodite. Aphrodite is an analytics startup in San Francisco that started in crowdfunding and is now moving into e-commerce. For this presentation, I want to show you 90 days that define the company and the software and how we're taking it from crowdfunding and going into e-commerce. So we're a pretty small team. We're just 5 people. I founded the company and hired and trained some of the best people I've ever found. And the thing that ties us all together is we love solving problems. I personally, after graduating art school, didn't want to work at Starbucks, but didn't know how to do anything. I solved the Rubik's Cube, and it changed a lot for me. And in the last 10 years, I've worked at Electronic Arts, Japan Airlines, Pitchfork Music, and did enterprise SaaS for Boeing, Johnson & Johnson, people like that. And I took all that experience and actually tried to start something different. And so I started an ad agency. Hired a lot of really smart people who are really awesome. And together we did a lot of crowdfunding campaigns. During the pandemic, we switched to being software only, and I'll show you that journey and how we got there. But first, there's something a bit different about the company, and it's because there's something a bit different about me. And I'll explain it a little bit, and then hopefully the rest of the presentation will make sense. So most people don't know this, but schizophrenia is not a you have it or you don't. It's actually a spectrum. And there's sort of lighter versions and sort of the more well-known versions. And the reason I bring this up is I'm here. And the reason I want to talk about it is, one, we have some problems communicating. So if anything doesn't make sense, just let me know. Integrate the feedback. I think visually, not in words, sort of like a second language to me. And the other thing that makes software make a lot of more sense is that connecting the dots for people like us, it's involuntary. So when something happens, our brain will immediately go back and forth and try to connect everything. Sometimes it does it wrong. That's usually when sort of the fun stuff happens. But in my case, because I'm low on the spectrum, I'm able to sort of make software like this. And the good news is I can be here on stage and dispel sort of one of the myths, which is in a lot of movies. I love Donnie Darko, but it's not really accurate how we work. It's closer to the right, which is we're sort of the scientists who don't leave their desk for a week. And you'll see that in the software. If you wonder how 5 people built this thing, that's the answer. This is all I do and all I think about. And the cool thing is, despite this, I've had a really awesome career. Been really fortunate to be sort of discovered and given opportunities at different countries, different companies. So for instance, I was a contractor at GoGo Vision Mobile, and nobody could figure out how to make a mobile version for the in-flight entertainment system, and because nobody wanted to do it, they gave it to me, and we figured it out in 6 weeks, and basically just said, well, let's take this desktop app and just make it look like Blockbuster, and then you just like click on the things. So if you flew American Airlines, Japan Airlines between 2014 and 2016 and rented a movie and saw that interface and clicked it, yeah, Schizo made that. Pitchfork Music Festival, worked on that, Electronic Arts, doing business intelligence, and then a bunch of enterprise SaaS. And the reason I bring that up is the journey will make a lot more sense of both the software and the company, and then we'll eventually get to the good stuff, which is, what can it do for you? So the story is a 90-day window into a crowdfunding campaign, and it's divided into 4 parts. So first, it's a lot of guesswork, a lot of Excel. Then it's actually upgrading and getting into the APIs of the platforms. And then part 4 is sort of the next level stuff. And what we have to show. So this crowdfunding campaign at the beginning, because I was new to advertising, I had a software background. I was just being helped by my mentor, Steve, who taught me everything about crowdfunding. He was the CTO for Agency 2.0. He showed me what ads should look like, but it wasn't getting the results that I wanted. So I started learning about different KPIs like click rate, purchase rate, stuff like that, and sort of reversed engineer how to do advertising just based on Steve's knowledge and sort of the data we were seeing. And at the beginning, they looked like ads. And the weird thing I noticed is the less they looked like ads, the more effective they were. And we had a bunch of different theories of how this worked and why this happened. But our belief was, well, people just skip ads; they don't want to see them. But if something is very tailored to them and it's actually talking right at them, then they'll actually engage with it instead of that sort of shield going up, which is like, oh, it's an ad, just like I'm trying to do other stuff. And we were tracking this in the beginning in Excel. So monitoring the ROI, learning about ROAS, stuff like that. The crowdfunding platforms don't have any APIs, so we're taking Excel exports, CSV exports, actually starting to build our own software around this. And the interesting thing is this particular campaign was in Taiwan. And my biggest pain point, essentially, as an advertising agency, was that at 5 p.m. every day, my day was supposed to end, but it didn't because Taiwan woke up. And the reason to this day, the software automatically updates everything for you and the client at 7 p.m. Is because I didn't have dinner with my friends for 3 months while doing this. And so what the hardware actually looked like was we got out of Excel and said, okay, we know how to do software, so let's plug into Facebook and say, can we build a Slack bot that just does ROAS? And this is about a year ago. This is about February 2020. And built two really basic charts. One is the one we really needed, which was just daily ROI. And then we started building sort of custom things where we were trying to explain fluctuations in ROAS, but there were no metrics that we could use, so we actually started just inventing our own stuff. So cumulative ROAS on the bottom right, you can see is sort of the very beginnings, both industry standard stuff and stuff we just put together. So how ROAS actually fluctuates over time, nobody could tell us, but by doing some simple math and actually having access to the core data, we were able to show it. And Indiegogo was really, really nice to us. It was like our first or second campaign, and they knew we weren't from around here, but they were really nice, and we were sending memes back and forth. And I think it was like the first campaign that tripled its contributions, just because we waited for Q1 costs to go down and do most of the money in demand. So we were doing pretty well in February 2020, and then all of a sudden something is happening in the data. So something's going on, and we don't know what it is. We're in America. Basically, everything's fine here, but the campaign is based out of Taiwan. And in February 2020, things are starting to change pretty rapidly in Asia. And so we looked at all the charts, and nothing we were tracking could explain it. But the ROI was just going completely haywire. So if you see Q4, that's a typical crowdfunding campaign, $100,000 to $200,000 in 30 days. In demand, which is usually much lower, revenue was going through the roof out of nowhere, basically. And we couldn't explain it. And one of our newer charts couldn't explain it either, which was just monitoring the CPM that was going on. So we actually had to sort of invent a new technology, which was taking all of the ad sets, scraping the geolocation data, and mapping that ROI around the world. And so what had changed wasn't the consumers or the data. What had changed was the world. And the core of the product is these 90 days during this campaign. So I'll show you 3 slides. So this is February 2020. This is March 2020. And this is April 2020. And if you start looking at what was actually going on in the world and how consumers were behaving, we started to notice patterns, and we were actually able to predict how, as the pandemic unfolded, it would actually change consumer behavior. So if you remember at the beginning, people, the buying behavior wasn't, 100% rational. It was like people buying toilet paper to the ceiling, or people's views of what products were coming where actually changed. So for instance, in February, Hong Kong and Singapore were doing really, really well. America was, doing a standard sort of 4 to 6x, which we were seeing. And then all of a sudden in March, people in America stopped buying. And we looked at the comment section, and it was clear that people were like, "Oh, this is coming from Asia. We don't trust it." And basically, all of the revenue in the United States just disappeared. And meanwhile, in Western Europe, it went off the charts. In Indonesia, it went off the charts. In Australia, it went off the charts. And then a month later, in April, for instance, when news came that Taiwan had handled the pandemic really well, revenue sort of took off again in the United States. And here you can see in like the final 30 days of this campaign, like Western Europe was behaving one way, Eastern Europe another. So this is probably like the most interesting data set that we ever looked at. And it just created an entire new technology for us that we're now is the cornerstone of our application. So one day I'll make a 90-day sort of animation of how this worked and put it on our website. So some of our earlier features, luckily, like helped us with our North Star. So that cumulative ROI thing that we came up with helped us as we were going from country to country and saying, okay, where are the stimulus checks hitting? Where are the attitudes towards international shipping? Who's buying what? Basically, as we were changing things, just checking the ROI as it was fluctuating. And that being our North Star, even though we had essentially coded it from scratch, that helped us. I think we turned like 40 grand in ad spend into 250,000 on Facebook with a total revenue of around $500,000. And after this, we sort of looked at what we had built and just said, wait, what is this thing? Because there's nothing like it. And the other thing was that the pandemic ended up affecting us too. So right around April, May, everyone's ad budgets just went to zero. And we were a very, very young agency. We were 9 months old. And I called my co-founders and I said, hey, I know people are saying, California will be on lockdown 2 to 4 weeks max. But I think this might be 18 months. And we don't have the deal flow to basically just survive with zero revenue. So we did a pretty hard pivot early and said, if we're going to make it, we got to sell 10% of the company and just do software. And I'm here with the squad a year later. So it worked, and I'll show you some of the newer stuff we built. So it began with just daily, cumulative, map, and cost. And the thing we looked at is, well, what do we actually have here? And sort of what is the vision for this thing? And there was nothing like it that we could look at with other software. There was, other software startups that did like small things, but there was nothing that just like tied it all together and just like connected all the dots. But when we look backwards, we were like, wait a minute, Bloomberg did this in the 80s, where everything was coming online. Traders were starting to be more data savvy. People were getting individual data points, and trading was starting to become real time. So we looked back at sort of the history of that and said, well, if we were to build a Bloomberg terminal for our generation, what would that look like? And so the last year has been onboarding people into this, retooling it to be self-service, handling all sorts of wild aberrations in data, and just making a really awesome product. So one of the things we did is, regardless of what platforms you're on, going into the conversion rate and the cart abandonment rate. So most people we talked to didn't know there was sort of a correlation. So again, it was a design problem where we would actually show the cart abandonment rate at the top with the chart going down and the conversion rate at the bottom going up, and sort of spikes and dips in both being correlated and related to each other. We figured out was less of a data problem and more of a communication problem. So a lot of the app is focused on just explaining things that a professional in marketing will immediately understand. And a novice, like I was a year ago, will sort of be able to piece together what it actually means and how, as they're changing things, it's increasing revenue, even if you're not spending more money on ads. The other thing we did, just some basic funnel stuff, and this is where we get back to like connecting the dots, which is that sales funnel that I saw on every PDF, on every slide deck. I just saw it and I was like, hey, I think I know if we plug into certain data points, we can do like a live version of that. So that was a thing that we just built out, and people immediately understood it because they were familiar with the visuals. And then some more complex things for sort of established agencies, so they can actually go through the data, export it, and know what to fix in real time. The next thing we did, the next evolution, was like, hey, we're just, in Facebook, let's actually start talking to Google too. And so layering Google data on top of Facebook data and saying, okay, what is the easiest thing for people to understand and implement? And did sort of a UTM tag map where even if you don't know what a UTM tag is, if you use Shopify, you already have this data. It started to click a couple buttons for people so they wouldn't have to set it up themselves. So every time we found a new user onboarded and said, hey, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, we would take what we were doing as an agency and then just do it via API. That way, people could set themselves up, people could know it works right out of the box. Now, those are our first chart where we let people decide sort of their level of granularity, because different people had different preferences. They wanted to know to the very last dollar, where's the money coming from, where's the money going, and what email campaigns are working, for instance. And this was sort of the next step for us. And that's when we decided to make the entire thing self-service, GDPR compliant, put it on mobile, and really sort of make this a mass consumable product. This one was a big request for us, which was agency white labeling. We're big fans of DocuSign. DocuSign is really good at making it feel like your brand, your company. So we shamelessly stole a lot of their features, which is you can add, like your email header to the daily 7 p.m. report. You can add your app logo. You can set some basic colors, stuff like that. And then we started working on e-commerce about 6 months ago. So it was an open beta, and basically took all of the data points for crowdfunding, which are the Facebook Pixel, the ROAS, the Google Analytics, things like that, and said, okay, now let's point it at a Shopify store, and basically retooled the application so you could use it no matter what platform you're on. So whether it's Shopify, WooCommerce, or a custom platform, as long as you have the tags implemented correctly. And for this, we were on our own test customers first. So because we were a crowdfunding agency, we actually had all the data to analyze crowdfunding, but we needed a e-commerce store. So we actually created a fake brand just for the data. And weirdly enough, it took off because, my personal story, I wanted to sell clothing and donate money to charity. And for a while, our R&D department actually had more money than us, which was kind of embarrassing. But yeah, we used Aphrodite to just A/B test it, make all of the improvements. And I think yesterday we donated the monthly revenue, and it's donated over $1,000 for mental health charities now, and it shot up to like the #1 charity for a specific niche, which is there's a schizophrenic programmer who made an operating system, and we sell hoodies with that logo on it. And after 10,000-15,000 in revenue, donating 10% of that, we just became #1 in that. And so there's two panels that you've seen. One is the advertising panel. So we still run ads for it. So this is the ads data for the R&D department, where we're going around the world and saying, okay, who likes this stuff where? Because it's a brand that shouldn't exist, but it really just exists for our own research. And it's taking off in Scandinavia. And then the other one is the e-commerce tab, which is, where's the money coming from? So now we can see, like the charity we donate to is actually linking to us and revenues coming from there. How's the cart conversion rate? How is this being optimized? So we've always been super heavy on like eating our own dog food and like interpreting our own data. And now is where it gets cool, which is this is a this is a feature that was pushed just on Friday. So this is our sort of latest and greatest, which was our number one request, which is, okay, well, you're giving me like a 30,000 foot view, but what do people actually think of my ads? And we've seen other tools that, they like look at the ads, they get the ROAS, they get some of the stuff. But what we wanted to do was go one step further, which was, let's actually run all the comments through machine learning and get the sentiment. Because when you're looking at comment section by comment section, you can sort of lose the plot of what's going on. But if you pull them all at once and run machine learning on them, you can actually get the sentiment for the brand and then drill down ad by ad. So this is essentially the finale of the presentation, which is our new engagement tab. So the engagement tab does two things. And again, we built it around our R&D department, where the engagement, because the brand is built to be sort of, as evocative as possible. We basically went through all of the crazy things that people say responding to this brand to try to map, what's going on and what's going on where. And embarrassingly enough, the number one sentiment is confusion. So we're going to start working on that. So hopefully, if you see ads for these hoodies, they'll be less confusing. But this is one of the main tabs. So it takes all of the Facebook engagement, takes all of the ROAS, builds a word cloud of what people are saying, takes the sentiment, shows it to you and maps it, and then goes into individual ads. So what we were surprised to see is that the number one ROI, the sentiments were love and gratitude, which, looking back is kind of obvious. When people see your ad and they love it, of course they're going to spend money with you. But this was sort of just something that we were doing instinctively, and seeing it actually play out and finding the data helped us do our future ads, which is, okay, this is the sentiment we're going for. This is what we want people to feel. This is how we want people to respond. And when we looked at some of our ads that didn't work, that might have been like a little bit too cocky or a little bit too like, oh, we're this brand. They didn't work because people were either confused or didn't get it or just weren't feeling it. And so it helped us actually go through the process again of like defining the brand, seeing what performs, and seeing what we can do for people, to feel that love and gratitude. And this is what we're bringing. It's going to be available after this talk. So right now it's hidden in the software. There's a switch we flip. And yes, we do have a discount for it. So people have asked, what does it cost? What do we do? We wanted to price it regardless of ad spend or revenue. So for an individual that's just using it, it's $99 a month. For a team that's using it, all unlimited data, it's $299 a month. And agencies are either done value-based pricing or we have a flat rate. And all those prices, you get another 50% off as a thank you to AdWorld for letting us come here and give this crazy presentation. That code will work until the end of May. And if you want to reach out to me, I can't go through everyone's data one by one for privacy reasons and for time reasons. But we have a support team. You can ping our squad. We'll help you out. We'd love for you to join us on this journey of connecting these dots and feel free to throw any questions out.